assassin droids can be very unpredictable.
They're switched off. They don't look so tough to me.
Nothing looks tough to you. Take my word for it, they're deadly.
What's up, Meta Nerds? In this video, we'll break down two of the most important Clone Wars era IG models, the IG Lancer and IG-86. Starting with the one to come out first, the Lancer. They're all manufactured by Hollow Mechanicals, aka the Friendly Technology people. They are most known for their IG line of droids, that was actually produced via blueprints drawn up over at Flut Design Systems, which was a Muunilinst-based weapons development firm, owned by the Intergalactic Banking Clan, which was always intended to secretly provide battle droids for the Trade Federation. The original was the IG Lancer combat droid, which is why we saw so many of them during the Republic invasion of Muunilinst during the Clone Wars. The Lancer would stand 1.96 meters or 6 feet 5 inches, but it's the same height for all the IG series, and just a few inches taller than the B1. And so the Lancer set the standard for their distinctive cylinder design, coming out of Project Flut Droid, which was essentially being run by Count Dooku, though of course this was through a complicated web of connections that concealed the build-up to the Clone Wars. The elongated head was inspired by Muun biology, like with the Colicoids in the Droideka and humans and tons of their droids. It was common that all species made droids that look like them. Many critiqued the strange two-pincher hands for grip that gave it less fine manipulation skill than almost any droid out there, but it did make up for it in strength, being more than twice the strength of a B1, while having remarkably quick reaction times that allowed them to spar in hand-to-hand combat against skilled organic martial artists. Despite its initial success, the terms of the loans that kept Flut designs afloat were simply too difficult to keep up with, and the IGBC was able to seize all of their company assets. This is when it got the IG name, short for the IGBC, and Chairman Sandhill had many of them installed as guards around Muunilinst commerce citadels. They could take a few shots before being destroyed, being known to be more blast resistant than most of the other IG series, and could move surprisingly fast, rip apart any organic like a Wookiee, and most did carry their Lancer poles with them, likely evoking the royal guards of ancient time, a similar idea to the pikes in the hands of the guards on Coruscant, while they would also start to be seen on speeder bike patrols after the Battle of Geonosis. It would be 4 months later when the Acclimators showed up in orbit, and LAAT stormed the capital of the Muun's banking empire. The bounty hunter Dirge was also brought in to become a general in the CIS, and he would lead the forces on this crucial world.
What are we going to do? I don't know why Dooku sent you here if all you're going to do is stand around. I mean, whenever you're ready.
And in repelling the ground invasion, the Power Lance would take center stage. Energy Lances can fire bolts out like a dual-purpose, longer blaster, but these ones were specially designed for piercing through heavily armored vehicles and delivering a devastating surge of energy through that opening they just made, achieved in part with the Vibroblade Edge. But the main attraction here is this insanely hot tip. The heating element at this point makes this thing work more like a lightsaber, as it would burn through armor, and of course had no issue on weaker things like the legs of walkers or speeders, and would vaporize clone troopers along with their plastoid armor. This is one of those weapons that is often forgotten, but it did play a constant role in every major faction since the Old Republic, with things like the Great Force Pike, and the clones used their own version designed by the Verpine species. And what you see here are the Serpent Masters who would wield them from the backs of their winged snake mounts. These are not official stormtroopers, but the riders were wearing salvaged armor. Leading from the front, Dirge would take his speeder force to flank the SPHAs, and racing through the ranks, they were able to use the Vibro Edge to slice through the repulsors. But it was by manually tossing anti-vehicle mines that they would set off a chain reaction throughout the massive artillery pieces, which had enormous reserves of Tabana gas and reactors needed to generate these ship and city-destroying beams. When the mines set this off, it made for a grand explosion that would be a morale victory for the defending forces. But General Kenobi was unshakable. In a joust with the Jedi and his clone squadron, many humans and IGs were killed. Kenobi would lose his helmet, and the fight would go to the ground as Dirge's speeder was slashed to scrap. And though this saber strike would kill most foes, Dirge was a Gendai, and it would take an entire arsenal and eventual force blast from within the bowels of the beast to finally deliver the Republic victory on Muunilinst. Of course, Dirge's defeat was temporary, but many of the Muun's punishments would be permanent. Some would see jail time for at least the remainder of the war, perhaps some had connections and could escape, but many would be executed just to send a message, either during the Clone Wars or later by the Emperor. But let's thank this video's sponsor, FlexiSpot. They just sent over this, the C7. It's a great ergonomic chair. That's my old chair over here. I mean, it's okay, but there were a lot of small issues, like the way that this part here kind of compresses your shoulders. There's issues on the back and the lack of lumbar support. All these things were hurting everything from my neck right up here down to my left lower back. With the C7, the magic starts with the mesh. It has just enough give to be comfortable and not mushy, and allows airflow down under. What I love is how this lower lumbar section automatically adjusts to where you're sitting, and the really simple but effective way that the headrest works. The headrest easily goes up and down, but it also swivels forward and back, which is something I actually end up using a lot. But it also has 4D adjustable armrests. You can adjust the seat depth, its height, and forward seat tilt while having a 90-degree to 128-degree recline. It's designed for heights from 5 feet 4 inches to 6 feet 2 inches. It can support up to 320 pounds, and there's a 30-day free return policy, so you can get your hands on it and try it yourself without any worries. Also coming with a 10-year warranty. FlexiSpot is having their brand day sale with up to 60% off. You have the chance to get free orders on May 27th. Check their website now and get the exclusive code BDC7 for an additional $30 off. Now is the best time to get your favorite chair or desk. Thanks again to FlexiSpot for the C7. I'm loving it, and I'm sure you will too. I want to mention this before moving on to the IG-86, that the power lance is similar to the lunge mine or the Shitotsu Bakurai, which is a weapon that is as simple as you can get. A high explosive anti-tank shaped charge attached to a wooden stick, which is just a stunningly perfect representation of Japan at this state of the war. This high-tech item on a broomstick, and with a design that was okay with taking the life of the person using it. Some of them would make their way into the hands of the Viet Minh soldiers during the First Indochina War, most notably used in 1946. Back to the galaxy far, far away, of course, to the frustration of many who could read between the lines of the Holo News headlines. Even though Muunilinst was known for working with the Separatists, just like what we see with the Trade Federation keeping representation in the Senate even after the outbreak of the Clone Wars, the banking clan's ties to so many Republic worlds, and most importantly, the ties to the Senators' bank accounts, would allow the IGBC to operate just fine after this. And a major event later in the Clone Wars was even the securing of more loans. So while giving loans to the Grand Army of the Republic, they also made sure to improve on the IG line, diving deeper into the repoed Flut design systems blueprints and numbering them IG-1 through 99, while also having the first one being a newly designed model, the IG-100. What's sad is that means there are 99 designs, but only a handful of them actually end up getting produced. While the first one was the newly designed 100, the next one to be realized was the 86. Going from the overt cavalry and guard duty role of the Lancer, the 86 would focus more on the role of being an assassin. They were even more agile and intelligent, far surpassing the battle droids, except perhaps the BX series commandos, and their ability to link up with other 86s during a mission made them one of the most terrifying threats out there. Zero even calls one his most trusted assassins.
My most trusted of assassins has finally failed.
For his failure, Zero would have him punished, and this 86 would regret all that programming towards self-preservation.
It will not happen again.
I know. Take him away and use him for spare parts.
No!
You can hear in that conversation that there is a complex personality matrix developing. So like we saw with the purposely simple B1s, even they were able to develop a personality after going so long without a memory wipe. These models must have been going through the full gambit of philosophizing after a few decades, getting everything from 86 Aristotle to 86 Sartre. As the war raged throughout the galaxy, R2-D2 would be captured and brought aboard the freighter Vulture's Claw, which was owned by the Trandoshan scavenger Ga Noct. In his collection were a pair of IG-86 droids, which he had charging at the time of his Jedi inspection of his vessel. Anakin proved correct to be cautious of these things as they sprung to life, and using E5 blasters, one was even able to dual wield, but despite their great ability and accuracy, it ended up being no match for the Chosen One and his apprentice. Though they showed off their agility, even took a deflected bolt, they were eventually scrapped by the Jedi. And later, 3 of them would be used during Cad Bane's attack on the Senate building, and since Anakin didn't have his lightsaber on him at this time, he'd be forced to evade and eventually pummel it with its own blaster rifle. And the IG line would eventually come to have the IGRM, 11, 12, kind of, 70, 86, 88, 90, and 100, being one of the rare companies to continue production after the end of the Clone Wars. When many of the CIS allies were shamed and dismantled, Holo 1 would live on long into the Imperial era, with 88 being the most famous, or infamous, depending on what side of the blaster you were. And like we saw with Zero, these 86s have the Black Sun Crime Syndicate markings, and this line was popular among the underworld with a never-ending supply of assassination contracts. And so we can assume that many would come under the control of Maul when he consolidated and controlled the underworld long after the Clone Wars ended. Feared everywhere from bookies on 1313 to the Jedi in their temples, none of them would ever rise to the prominence of the feared bounty hunter IG-88B. So that's it for the breakdown, and as for behind the scenes facts, oddly enough they appear in the mobile versions of Battlefront. This is a Lancer, not an 86 or 88. but it explicitly says it's an IG Lancer, though it seems to just fire blasters and not have the Lancer weapon itself. That might make for a pretty cool mod though. And the best source would be the new Essential Guide to Droids, and they do get a short mention in Labyrinth of Evil. Please hit that like button, it really is the best way to help me out. Subscribe if you already made it this far, and check out these videos, I'm sure you'll like them. But most important of all, remember, no matter the tech, men will find ways to joust, and the Force will be with you, always.